Hi, I'm Grace Lynch. This is a video about an idea I have called the complexity problem. Some years ago, when I got back here and up the streets, and I was getting correctly diagnosed and building a life again, I there was no traditional care for me because, as I've stated in other videos, when the primary at the time was looking for a neurologist who would help me with TBI, they wouldn't take me because no one would take me because I had autism, and the neurologists who would work with autism wouldn't take me because I had TBI, and the only ones that we could find that worked with both only worked with children. I was not yet set up with OBWE services, and even when I did get set up with that, it only lasted a little bit because it got wiped out when I got service connected with the VA. But for a time, briefly, when I was first diagnosed with autism, I got a really young, really progressive young doctor, and she was telling me about some non-traditional medical ideas, to wit, uh, B vitamins, reducing stress. Well, I guess they're traditional ideas, but they're not formally medical diagnostic things. Uh, Weighted blankets for autism, you know, uh, music apps, color, sensory needs, and stuff like that. But we found a physical therapist who's a young guy, Dr. Spencer Blackman, who has some really new and interesting ideas about how to treat trauma somatically with physical therapy. And he developed the ideas, and then he treated me for about 6 months. We became friends after that. It was some years ago. But during our conversations after that, we were speculating about the origins of neurodiversity, and he encouraged me to sort of explore things and look things up, investigate online and stuff. And one of the ideas that came up was the possibility that because I dealt all the time in my trauma recovery, the doctors would do blood work every 3 months, and my cortisol levels were way above 20, which is way outside the normal range. And I was living in that place for like however many years. Um, that's what caused the primary doctor at the time to speculate that part of my difficulties regulating was due to adrenal failure, where my adrenal system was so activated in trauma all the time that it was flooded with the stress chemicals, and then the parasympathetic system couldn't wash that out. Um, so my adrenal system got tired. Turn this off. And got exhausted trying to regulate because it was having to regulate all the time, and it's not designed to regulate all the time. It's supposed to activate to deal with threat and then relax for a while. Anyway, so the possibility was that since adrenaline and cortisol can, at least from what I could find out, cross they cross the blood-brain barrier. They also can cross the placental barrier. It's what I could find out online. I'm not a doctor person, so don't take my word for it. But it helped shape my understanding about which led to this idea that I'm going to present. And so then the notion was that it's a possibility that part of what drives the increase in neurodiversity is stress felt in the mother, trauma things that may be unresolved, so that her adrenal and cortisol levels are higher. They impact the formation and conception of the baby and affect its gestation and stuff like that. I don't know if all it's true, but it was my thoughts at the time. And so then I wondered about where the stress would be coming from if the women don't seem to be any more stressed over history. Could there be like an invisible stress? I don't know. But I got to thinking about how like my own children and down the generations, one of the common things I find, and I think it's true, is that each generation seems to come out of the chute smarter. The younger people, like 5 years old, can dismantle and reassemble iPads and things like that. And I got to wondering if there might be some kind of invisible something, a stressor happening in society that we don't know about. And because I struggled with language, because I live inside and outside of language at the same time, and I survived that more easily, I think, because of the nature of my particular form of autism. Um, I got to wonder about if there might be something that is actually generating a stress. Maybe there's nothing wrong with society in terms of producing a biological adaptation to the complexity of the world. Maybe the reason that the thing is exploding is because something's working. The mind that's trying to decide contextual language is working, but the mind is each individual is learning faster than they can use that narrative mind to keep up with what they're learning. How could that be? And it hit me that how conceptual language works. You imagine a group of 10 people in a small village 200,000 years ago, and they work on some phenomenon. They come to a shared idea, they get a shared understanding, they get maybe a word around that understanding. When an understanding works, the reason it works is because each person taking the understanding, it works in their individual context. The part that narrative language takes account of is the way that people decide together what ideas and meanings are and work together to use it to solve problems. The part that does not get processed in the way that I've ever heard of is that it's also true that when a new understanding happens in this group of 10 people, because each person, it's an understanding for each person for whom the understanding is a collective thing, the way an understanding works in an individual life is to make their life easier. So each of those 10 people take that new understanding and bring it back into their life and do their lives better in an individual way because their understanding helped them. But to be an individual is to be sort of a chaos system relative to the rest of the world, because an individual is a biological organism, a human that has never been seen before. It is not predictable because it has it's a chemical and physical structure that has never existed before inside the context of its life. So the understanding comes back and the person is able to be themselves better, which makes their way of being an individual, which acts like a chaos system in the collective and in the larger world, more efficient. One understanding simplifies the world for the group. But the group, each individual, takes that understanding back to their lives, and each one of their lives grows the complexity of the whole situation by the number of individuals involved. One understanding simplifies the world one way, but the complexity of the world grows, the human world grows, by the number of people that take it back into their lives and live their lives more easily. One understanding simplifies, but it amplifies the complexity tenfold. Now, if you have 100 people that have the shared idea, then the collective understanding simplifies the world once and generates chaos, complexity, 100-fold. And you pass that down the generations. Each time the next generation takes it, then they take it. They've evolved, so they take this, and it's not only a collective understanding, but now it's passed down and amplified that way. And we do this that was one word generates complexity for 100 people. Think about all the words and all the understandings that humanity has been making one at a time for 200,000 years. And it becomes easy to see why it's possible that we're generating understandings as if we're collective, but the effect of that is each of us taking these understandings back to our lives more and more efficiently. And the act of doing that lets us be ourselves more efficiently, which immediately creates more complexity because we express ourselves and build a society from our individual nature. The more we learn, the more complexity we generate. And so the more we try to simplify stuff, the harder the situation gets. Now it becomes easier for me to see why maybe nature is biologically adapting human beings to process in a way that is idiosyncratic, but perhaps body-based rather than trying to stay in the cognitive narrative system, because it becomes too much input. So just an idea, the complexity problem about what might be participating in the emergence and explosion of neurodiversity. That's all. Have a good one. Bye.